Hi, everyone. Welcome to Career Conversations. I'm Meera Jogasundram, and I am so glad to introduce our guest today. So glad and so grateful that he could make it and join us today. John Oberg is an animal advocate dedicated to making the world a kinder place for animals by utilizing the power of social media. A vegan since 2009 and full-time animal activist since 2012, he became an independent animal advocate in 2018, funded through individual donations, focusing on amplifying pro-animal content in the digital space. Previously, he served as the director of new media for the Humane League and as director of communications for Vegan Outreach. In his decade of experience in social media advocacy, he has made over 100 media appearances, has accumulated 250,000 followers. His posts have been seen over 1 billion times, and he has heard directly from thousands of people who have been influenced by his work. John, I am delighted to have you on board. Welcome.
Mira, thank you so much for having me. This is a great honor. You're doing great work in steering people in the right direction of their life, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about my experience with animal advocacy and the journey that I've been on in the last decade and more to get to where I am today and to focus on doing what I can to make the world a kinder place for animals.
And you are doing an amazing job, John. From what I've seen on social media, it is absolutely inspiring, and I can't wait. I'm sure our viewers can't wait as well. Please tell us about your career journey. The floor is yours.
Sure. So my career journey is, I would say, more on the unique side of life. And also, I will give your viewers and listeners a little background. I'm currently in Mexico City, and it's still warm here, so I have my doors and windows open, and so you might hear a little bit of noise in the background from the street. If it gets too noisy, I'm sure Mira will let me know, and I can close them. But it feels great. The wind is feeling amazing here in Mexico City. Highly recommend visiting. I've been here for about a week and I'm here for a few more weeks. It's a really wonderful place to be, very vegan friendly, and I love it. So anyway, so as far as my journey goes for animal advocacy, so I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and I was raised by a single mother named Karen Oberg. She was an amazing human being, and she really taught me to have compassion for animals. And a lot of things happened in my life. I eventually went to college in Arizona, and then after graduating college, I got a job with Vegan Outreach, where they paid me to travel around North America, handing out leaflets at college campuses. And these leaflets talked about the ways in which animals were being abused behind the closed doors of factory farms and slaughterhouses, and encouraged people to be more compassionate, to
How
eat
old were
more
you,
vegan
John?
food.
Sorry for interrupting. How old were you when you were handing out leaflets?
I was in my early 20s, early and mid 20s. Yeah. And I love that work, and I found it to be very, very impactful. And then my mom, she unfortunately was diagnosed with stage 4 small cell lung cancer in 2013. And so I could no longer travel for Vegan Outreach. And so I took a hiatus from my job and took care of my mom full time in Detroit, Michigan. And while I was taking care of her, the opportunity arose to run the social media for Vegan Outreach. And I reluctantly agreed to do it. I wasn't super enthusiastic about it
Why is
initially.
that?
Well, it seemed like a lot of work at the time, and I was taking care of my mom, and it was, I was so used to dealing with people in the real world. I was handing out, thousands of leaflets every day, and I loved that work, and I didn't want to get away from that work. But this was the only option I really had at the time, and I decided to take them up on the offer, and I began running the social media for Vegan Outreach, and then I very quickly realized that in just one day of focusing my efforts in the digital space instead of the real life space, I could have exponentially more impact for animals. And so I decided to focus my efforts on social media. And so I began building up the social media presence of vegan outreach. And then after a couple of years of doing that, I moved on to focus my efforts doing the same thing at a group called the Humane League. And then after a few years there, I decided to focus on my own social media accounts. And so just over 5 years ago, I became an independent animal advocate using my own social media accounts to amplify pro animal content. So if you were to go to my social media accounts, at John Oberg, you would find a lot of content that is coming from undercover footage from factory farms and slaughterhouses, but also the happy side of animals and seeing animals expressing joy and, living their best lives in animal sanctuaries around the globe. And you are really seeing a different side of animals that you otherwise wouldn't be seeing. And as far as the career angle here, so the way that I have made this work is by focusing on uh, just my own social media accounts, but that's been funded through the donations of people around the world who believe that the work that I'm doing is impactful and meaningful for animals. And so the vast majority of donors to support my work just give me $5 or $10 per month through a platform like Patreon or DonorBox. And I feel very fortunate to have this support. And enough of these people add up to make an income for myself. And so every day I wake up, I jump on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and other platforms, and I focus on getting as many views as possible of really, really important content. And luckily, I am positioned in a way that a lot of people can see my content. And while you speak, Mira, I'm just going to quickly close my doors because it sounds like they're doing construction right outside my door, which is not happening at all the rest of today. So
It doesn't
I will be
matter.
right back.
No problem. Take your time. So,
Sure.
viewers, while John closes his door, for those who are watching this live stream, if you choose to ask questions or comment, please feel free to comment in the comment section attached to this post. But I believe you will have to log in to YouTube, LinkedIn. Platforms like these require login or you have to sign in and then you can comment. But please feel free to ask your questions. Now, John, tell us more about the work that you do now. For example, how you do it, how you prepare for it, and how it's completed. Tell us more about that.
So essentially, my theory of change is that we have a ton of people in the world who care about animals. Polls consistently show that almost everybody opposes animal cruelty. 97% of people agree on surveys that animals should not face cruelty. And you can't get 97% of people to agree on pretty much anything. But everybody believes this. Unfortunately, at the same time, the vast majority of people are making choices every day that go in that are counter to this belief. They are actively eating animals, and eating animals causes a lot of animal cruelty. And so my theory of change here is that as more people understand the true consequences of their behavior and decisions, they will understand that they can also feel empowered and feel like they can oppose this cruelty. And that can be done through eating plant-based food rather than animal-based food. It's a pretty simple concept. And while there are lots of vegan creators and animal advocates out there who steer people in different directions and have different niches. I never know how to pronounce that word correctly.
Depends
But
on
have a
whether you're American or British.
exactly. Well, I'm American, but I do feel like I say it the British way just because one of my close friends is from the UK and he's always telling me to say it the other way. So anyway, some people are really focused on vegan food, for example, and telling people how to make great vegan food. For me, my the biggest contribution that I can make as an animal advocate is by amplifying this pro animal content and getting people to think about animals differently and to raise awareness about the ways in which animals are being abused around the globe and behind the closed doors of factory farms and slaughterhouses. And so that is where I feel like I can make the biggest difference. If I can go to sleep knowing that a few hundred or a few thousand or a few 10,000 people that day are now aware of the cruelty that chickens, pigs, cows, fish experience on their way to people's plates, the more impact that I feel like I can make. So I've taken that same mindset I had when I used to hand out leaflets, where I knew that if I handed out 1,000 in a day, that was way better than handing out 100. So with social media, I know that if 1,000 people see a post instead of 100, that is 10 times as much impact. And for me, that is my big goal. And my goal is always to reach as many people as possible. And so I purposely select content that I think is going to get the biggest amount of views and engagement and to make the biggest impact on people. And this has really come after many, many years of doing social media advocacy. I've been doing full time social media advocacy for about 11 years now. And so
Wow.
I've sort of developed a sense of what kind of content is going to perform well and be impactful. And of course, it's not always a success. Just like with everything in life, there are failures along the way that I learned from, and I try to be as impactful as I can on a daily basis with using social media. And of course, social media gets a bad rap. There's a lot of negative things about social media. Of course, there's a lot of a certain level of toxicity. Even if you look at the fact that so many people just feel like there's no consequences to whatever they do or say on social media, so they behave in just outrageous, ruthless ways at times, it can be a toxic place. That being said, I think that for animal advocacy purposes, social media is overall a major net positive. And so I think that social media really provides us a way in which we can communicate a message for animals or for any cause that people are interested in a way that we never could before. Never before in the history of humankind have we been able to reach people like that on the other side of the globe. And so social media really provides us this really amazing new way to communicate, which I am trying my best to take full advantage of.
And you're doing a fantastic job. Might I add, absolutely amazing. Now, how much resistance do you encounter?
Well, thank you for your compliment, Mira. And as far as the resistance that I face on social media, I would say it's pretty substantial. That being said, it is a numbers game. And so I understand that if I am making a big impact, some of those people who are being impacted are people who are going to show resistance. And so when I face resistance, like through people trolling and leaving negative comments on my posts, I understand that, hey, that means that more people are seeing my content, which is a good thing. So I feel very happy when people start adding troll comments to my posts because I know that I'm making more of an impact. And what's interesting is that trolls actually can be beneficial because they get conversations going and they get more engagement on posts. So the negativity that I might face on social media is well worth it. I'm very happy to be, the target if that means that more people are going to be seeing pro animal content and more people are going to be impacted and eat and live more compassionately as a result.
Besides social media advocacy, tell us about the other work that you do.
Yeah, so the vast majority of my animal advocacy is done through social media, but I also do I give lectures and talks about using social media well and just talking about being more mindful of the ways in which we are interacting with our fellow animals. I do these at festivals, at conferences, online, doing webinars. I do some media, and I found this to be a really great way to reach an audience that otherwise might not reach, which is very nice. I do some social media consulting. So I work with animal rights and animal protection organizations, individuals in the movement, and provide them recommendations as to how they can make their social media impact better. I do a very small amount of philanthropic advising where I advise a donor about the ways in which they can make as much impact as possible with their financial support and contributions. And then I try to do a little bit of in person outreach as well these days. Not so much leafletting as much as I do love the good old days of handing out leaflets. One thing I like to do from time to time is attend vigils outside slaughterhouses. So in the last 5 years, I've gone to vigils at outside slaughterhouses in Los Angeles, in Toronto, Ontario. In a couple of weeks, I'll be doing a vigil outside of a slaughterhouse here in Mexico City, which I'm very excited about. I'm excited in a certain way. It'll be very heart wrenching and heartbreaking to see these animals after a long journey. Just before they enter a slaughterhouse, they don't know where they're going. It's so heartbreaking and seeing these animals in these conditions. But at the same time, it's empowering to know that I am doing my best to make an impact for them and to do this alongside other animal advocates and groups who are doing really great work of amplifying content around these animals and telling their stories and getting people to think about animals differently. It's really, in that way, it's very beautiful. And it's also provides a really great opportunity to get a bunch of content. And that content then I can use on my social media channels and tell these animal stories myself and to tell people about how they impact me. And for example, around 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a vigil outside of a slaughterhouse, a pig slaughterhouse in downtown Los Angeles. The slaughterhouse is called Farmer John Slaughterhouse, and you should have seen this place. There are paintings all over the murals, all over the sides of the walls of happy animals, smiling pigs with big smiles on their faces. And I saw these pigs as they were entering the slaughterhouse, and I will tell you that there were no smiles to be had. And so, outside of the slaughterhouse, I interacted with these pigs in their final moments, and I interacted with this one pig named Terry, and I named him Terry after just our 1 minute interaction because he made such an impact on me, and I got video of him basically making eye contact with me and the camera, and I posted this video on my Instagram account a couple of months ago of me making eye contact with Terry, and you will see him just staring at the camera. You can see the fear in his eyes, the confusion, the sadness, the terror. And those were his final moments before entering the slaughterhouse. And that video went viral on Instagram and now has 1.4 million views of that video. And I know that that will make, of course, it's too late for Terry, but it's not too late for the many other animal advocates or for the many other animals who will be spared a lifetime of suffering as a result of people being inspired by seeing Terry and seeing and hearing his story.
John, you have described it. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but for people like me, when you describe how you connected with Terry and how he responded to you, and even that in and of itself, it's very difficult to watch and accept. What would you say to people like us?
Yeah, so I don't expect basically anybody after this video to close their computer or open up a new tab and then just go down a rabbit hole of animal cruelty content. But what I do hope that people can try and do as we move on as a society is just be open to understanding new uh, new information and understand that maybe what you've been told all your life and shown by the meat industry and the lies of big ag is perhaps not right, is perhaps um, has perhaps steered you to making lots of decisions that go against ethics that you already have. And I promise you, the ethics that you already have in saying animal cruelty is wrong, uh, unfortunately, don't match up with the ways in which we eat. And that's no fault of you or of any of your listeners. I personally ate animals for years When I was 19 years old, I once ate 39 chicken wings in one sitting. That is the wings of over a dozen chickens. It's just unreal to think about the fact that I ate a dozen chickens worth of wings in a single meal, one meal of one day. And if I could change, anybody can change. And so it's really important to understand that in today's world, we don't need to live in a way where we are making choices that harm animals. We can live in a way that uh, animals are being helped by our choices. And you don't need to necessarily go vegan overnight. I would highly recommend anybody who wants to live with more compassion in their life to just understand that it's a spectrum. You have a standard Western diet here, and you've got veganism here. Okay. I highly recommend getting people to move along that spectrum towards veganism. And that could be as little as trying meatless Monday. So every Monday, eat without meat, go vegetarian on that day. And you will find that there is such a great array of options out there for you that you will absolutely love it and be feel empowered. It feels very, I have to say, it feels very nice to feel like you have control over the foods you're eating and what you're supporting. So for me, when I went vegetarian, when I went vegan, especially, uh, of course, I felt better physically, but what I really felt better was feeling like this weight lifted off my shoulders mentally. I knew that I was no longer paying somebody to do something to an animal that I myself would never do. And that is a concept that I think more people need to be open to, and I think that more people are being more and more open to it. And social media provides this really great opportunity. And while I don't necessarily think that everybody who watches one of my videos or sees that video of Terry is going to go vegan overnight, but I am doing what I can to chip away at the walls that people have up between veganism and the standard Western diet, which so many people have been forced to embrace just because we grew up and that's all we know and that's all that is being fed to you. But luckily, in today's world, things can be different.
How how do you respond to, or how do you deal with people who know something really bad is happening or cruel is happening, but they choose not to know?
People are on their own journey, and I can't expect, I can't force feed people this information. um, and for me, I went vegan in my early 20s, but for years before that, I was also in a similar boat where I knew that animals, I was eating animals, and I maybe occasionally thought, well, that's kind of weird, and then I just moved on with my day. And if I would have met a vegan and they would have said, it's really messed up that you're eating animals, or they would have talked about this cruelty, I probably would have pushed it out of my head because that would have meant that I'm doing something that I think is ethically wrong. And people don't want to ever think that they're a bad person, right? Who out there is like, yeah, I'm a bad person or I'm doing bad things. Nobody wants to think that way, okay? And so it's very hard to absorb this, and it takes a certain amount of uh, time and patience. And a lot of my fellow animal advocates have run out of patience, and it can be very frustrating, and that's understandable. But we need to understand the society. We need to reach people where they are rather than where we want them to be. And so it's a very important to have an open heart and an open mind. And my advocacy in particular, I really try to win hearts and minds rather than arguments and debates, because I really want to uh, get people to understand, hey, you know what? There's this horrible stuff's happening. You can choose this or you can choose that. And I want more people to choose that. And I think because of my advocacy, a lot of people have chosen that. And I want other animal advocates to do the same thing. And for the general public out there to just be more and more open to this. And that's a very long-winded way of me saying that, yes, I understand if uh, you are confronted with this information and it's a lot to take in, and it can be frustrating, and you might not want to do anything about it. But you know what? there's always time. You're on your own journey, and luckily in today's world, there's so many resources out there that you could take advantage of. I do hope that you are just open to the idea of at least one day moving along that spectrum, and I promise you, it is not a sacrifice. And in fact, in today's world, choosing vegan food is actually opens more doors than it closes. People think that, oh, suddenly you have way less food that you can choose from. Actually, it opens up to you to so many new kinds of food out there. If I hadn't gone vegan, I probably wouldn't have found out how great tofu can be, how great tempeh can be, how great Asian cuisines can be, like Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Singaporean, Thai food. I wouldn't have found out how great. There's just so many things that I've been more open to as a result of being vegan. So it's actually made me a much more well-rounded individual and much more well-rounded consumer of foods rather than somebody who has been battling with it. I've never once in the 14 years I've been vegan thought, oh man, this sucks. What am I going to eat?
Okay, in your opinion, if someone wants to contribute or play a part, for example, this is a random example, they want to contribute to a sanctuary, how do they go about choosing a sanctuary? What would they have to look out for?
Well, if anybody wants to contribute to uh, animal advocacy causes, I mean, there's a lot of different ways in which you can do so. Some of that is helping direct animals, which is great, whether that's through animal sanctuaries or animal rescue. I think that you can even make money go very far if you are focusing on striking at the root. And focusing on getting people to understand the cruelties of factory farming and animal agriculture, which then make more people choose more plant-based foods and eat fewer animals, and that would actually bring fewer animals into this rotten food system. And so, I think there's lots of different ways in which you can do so, and there are lots of great organizations out there that actually focus on recommending charities and animal advocacy organizations that do really great work. There's one called Animal Charity Evaluators that does a deep dive into many animal advocacy organizations and gives you the recommendations as to which organizations provide some of the best ways in which animals can be helped. As far as helping direct animals, I think it would be the ways that animal sanctuaries that you find to be most effective. And it's hard to make that determination online necessarily. But I would recommend going in person to any animal sanctuaries that you can and seeing which organizations do really good work. For me, my favorite animal sanctuaries are the ones that take advantage of social media. And that's probably no surprise based on how this conversation has gone. But I think that animal sanctuaries that post a lot of great pro animal content are doing really, really good, important work. So, animal sanctuaries like Farm Sanctuary, Barn Sanctuary, Life with Pigs Sanctuary in Virginia, Rosie's Farm Sanctuary in Maryland. Those are
Off the
some
plate, I
organizations.
know Off the Plate Sanctuary is also doing a great job.
Yeah, there are so many. There are
So
so
many,
many,
so many.
and with the beautiful thing about animal sanctuaries is that they can tell these animal stories in a way that most can't, and they can see these animals up close and personal and get people to think about animals differently. So yes, like, a lot of the animal cruelty content that I've posted has definitely impacted people, but a lot of the pro animal content, or a lot of the happy animal content, I should say, from animal sanctuaries has also made a really big difference. I know that when I've posted photos and videos of some of the pigs that I interacted with at Rosie's Farm Sanctuary, like Sunshine the pig, who was literally rescued after falling off of a truck on the way to the slaughterhouse. I know that Sunshine, through my social media channels, not even counting Rosie's Farm Sanctuary channels, just through mine in itself, has actually made a really big impact on people because they have seen, wow, this is where bacon and pork chops comes from a real live animal who has feelings, who has a desire to live, who is worthy of my compassion, my consideration, and my respect.
And that ties brings me to my next question. You mentioned that you are doing consultation on social media and philanthropy and all that. In your opinion, what would be the best way to get the message across on social media?
So the best way to get the message across on social media is to focus on reach. So focus on reaching as many people as possible, and doing so in an effective way. And so, uh, you know, I could go out on the street corners and scream "meat is murder," and I don't know, throw paint on the glass door of a butcher shop. But you know what? That is not going to be an effective way of winning anybody over. We need to win hearts and minds. And we need, and the animals need us to be as effective as possible. And so, if you have that mindset, that should help you really focus on where you can make your animal advocacy go on social media. And I think that's really important to reach your audience where they are rather than where you want them to be. So if your audience is mostly comprised of non-vegans, let's say your audience is mostly your friends and family and work colleagues, and they just, 98% of them are not vegan. I would say don't just start blaring, posting the worst content possible and say, if you're not vegan, you're a POS. I think that a more effective way would be to talk about your journey, talk about why you are vegan and why animals matter to you, and your experience meeting an animal at an animal sanctuary, or your experience seeing a video on social media of what a chicken experiences on their way to a slaughterhouse, things like this. And your audience will be much more likely to hear you out. And so I think you can do so in a really nice, kind, respectful way, in which in a way that in a way where you are reminded and you remember that people are on their own journey. And for that reason, we really need to reach people where they are, again, rather than where we want them to be.
I think that, and the other thing that you said, it's about winning over their hearts and minds more than judging them or pointing out the faults. Yeah, I'm curious, John. You are doing so much of work. You have attended vigils. You have made contact with Terry just before he entered the slaughterhouse. Heartbreaking. Now, all this experience, how has it impacted you?
Well, at times it can certainly be heartbreaking, and there are certainly days where I shed a tear for the experiences that farm animals are facing and will continue to face for a long time, and that most of these animals will never know an ounce of compassion in their lives. That being said, for me as an animal advocate, as a full-time animal advocate for 12 years now, I have focused my energy on the good that I can do rather than the bad that I can't control. And there's so much cruelty out there that I can't prevent. But if I just sat around and thought about that all day, every day, I mean, I could, but that is going to put me in a really bad headspace and not make me an effective advocate for the rest of the hours of any given day. And so I've done a few things. For one, I actually go out of my way to have interests and hobbies outside of animal advocacy. And so it's something I've really focused on for since basically I got involved with animal advocacy. So I play soccer. I run an adult recreational soccer club in Richmond, Virginia. I really love heavy metal music. So I'm always listening to music, always going to concerts and exploring that side of life. I enjoy fitness and going to the gym, and so those are some of my interests outside of animal advocacy. And that has really helped me prevent burnout, prevent myself from becoming burnt out, which I know is unfortunately something that a lot of animal advocates have not been fortunate enough to do. And so I've known some really great animal advocates over the years who maybe threw themselves into the fire too much. And what happened is After a year or two, they couldn't take it anymore and they found other interests in life and basically forgot about animal advocacy. And that can happen to anybody. And so it's really important for every animal advocate out there to position themselves in a way where they are not going to burn out, because burning out is terrible. It's such a cliche, but this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so the
Yeah.
animal advocates or the animals out there need us to be effective animal advocates for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, not 2 months, 6 months, 2 years.
That's so eloquently put. It's to do your work optimally for the animals, you must find a balance, and you must have a life for yourself. You must create a life for yourself apart from the animals. That is so important. What keeps you going, John?
What keeps me going is just knowing that, at the end of every day, I can be proud of the work that I've been a part of, and that the movement in general is doing. Yeah, despite the horrors animals are facing, I do feel optimistic about the future. I see a lot of good things happening for animals. I see so much more vegan food becoming available on a regular basis. You see clean meat starting to come into existence, which I think is going to be absolutely huge in terms of ending factory farming. You see laws going into a place that prevents some of the worst cruelties of factory farming. You see corporations adopting animal welfare measures that reduce some of the worst cruelties that animals face. And so I am optimistic about the future. Of course, the speed of which we reach a cruelty-free world is entirely dependent on the speed of which people are willing to make that happen and the hard work that animal advocates are willing to do. And so it's really important that we as animal advocates do everything in our power to be as effective as possible. It's really about rolling up our sleeves and doing that hard work and putting your efforts and putting your resources in a way that is going to maximize good for animals.
Very sharp and focused response. I love that. Okay. What is your vision for the future of animal advocacy?
The future of animal advocacy, I think, much takes place largely online. We're moving in the digital space in so many different ways. I mean, even look at the Apple Vision Pro. I mean, I don't know how much that'll take on or take over, but that is sort of a sign of the future where we are just in this digital space constantly, and therefore we need to get people, reach people where they are. And so I see more and more animal advocacy, just like more and more in life in general, moving to the digital space. If you walk down the street and you see 8 people, 7 of them are going to be looking at their phones. It is really wild. I'm one of them. And so it's really wild. I mean, 10, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't like this. We are moving into this digital space, and we as effective animal advocates should be moving alongside with them.
What's your definition of owning your career?
My definition of owning your career is just
Your career. I mean, how would you own your career?
so owning my career means doing work that I think is impactful while balancing it while balancing it in a way that is sustainable. And so, if I did nothing but animal advocacy from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, and had no other interests outside in life and did nothing else, I would be a bit more effective in the short term, but I would not be more effective in the long term. And so it's really important for me to live my life in a way that is providing a balance. And so it's important for me to focus on being as effective as possible in those hours in a given day or given week that I'm dedicating to animal advocacy. And I really do try to focus on being as effective as possible. Over the last 4 months, I've been doing all kinds of research about the most effective ways to be engaging on social media, whether it's the amount of times I should be posting every day, the kind of content that's performing well, the kinds of captions that are performing better, which content is performing best. Just constantly learning and adjusting my approach. I don't have a PhD in social media science. I'm not a magician, and I'm not paying to run social media ads. I'm just a regular person who's utilizing social media to be as effective as possible for animals. And so the way that I own my career is by focusing on being as effective as possible while also living in a way where I can do this animal advocacy for the rest of my life rather than the next year or two.
What would you tell someone on the street, a layperson, an ordinary person? What would you tell that person to encourage him or her to help the animals?
Well, the best way that any individual can help animals is by not eating animals. And why? And that's the why is because of the dozens of animals you eat every single year. So that is by far the biggest way in which we are impacting any animals. In fact, any life in general that has the capability of feeling pain and fear, that is the biggest impact that we make. And so by simply reducing your meat consumption, you can make a really big difference. And so the way that I encourage anybody to make a difference is to move along that spectrum between standard Western diet and veganism. And so I might have not even use the V word because it might turn some people off. And so there is no silver bullet argument to veganism. There's no one catch-all argument or case to be made that is going to impact everybody. You really have to focus on who you're speaking with. But in general, for me, I focus on the animals, even though there's lots of good reasons to go vegan, whether it's your health, environment, um, the justice for slaughterhouse workers. There are so many reasons to be vegan. It's pretty astonishing. For me, the real reason and the real uh, cause is for the animals, and you could make a huge difference. And so I just encourage people to be open to eating more vegan food. And I think a really good strategy is crowding out. So what I mean by this is crowding out meat and dairy and animal products with animal or plant-based food. And so that isn't necessarily, you're not going to necessarily look at it as a sacrifice, as no longer being able to eat the foods that you loved. It is you eating new foods that you love.
Okay, crowding out. I learned something. I learned something today. Now, before we close, John, what would you like to tell our viewers, those watching you live, and those who will be watching you for sure, the recording?
So for anybody watching today or watching later, if anybody wants to follow me on social media and get involved in my work, they can do so by following me on any of the major social media accounts or channels out there. My name is John Oberg, so if you just search my name, you should be able to find me. And just to be open to making as much of an impact as you can for animals, and don't look at it as all or nothing. Just thinking about if you are somebody who consumes animals today, that's okay. Move on in a way in which you feel like you can make a difference, and be open to different ways in which you can eat. And I think following myself or following other accounts that are similar, you will be exposed to new ways of living and eating that are going to really positively impact you and positively impact the animals. And I don't post a ton of food content myself, but there are so many great like vegan food bloggers out there that post amazing content, and you would be I guarantee you that you will be amazed. And I think one other thing I will recommend is that there's an app called Happy Cow. It's also a website if you just prefer to use your computer. And no matter where you are in the world, unless you live in the middle of nowhere, if you live anywhere close to a major metropolitan area, I highly recommend you pull up the Happy Cow app and look at the options near you. It'll show you vegan restaurants, vegetarian restaurants, and restaurants that just have really good vegan options. And I highly recommend you try some of those places. So if you're going to go out for a meal this week, make one of them a meal that you discover on the Happy Cow app.
Okay, now viewers, if you would like to follow John, all the social media links, his social media handles, are attached to this post that you are watching right now, and it will be attached to the recording as well. Now, John, if someone wants to support your work, how can they do so?
If anybody wants to support my work, they can make a donation through donorbox.org/John Oberg. The links for those are all in my link tree, which is the URL that I use on all of my social media accounts. I highly appreciate monthly donations because that is sustainable income, even if that's just $5 a month. That goes a long way for me. So if anybody's open to doing that, that would mean the world to me. Thank you.
John, thank you so much for your amazing work. Thank you for your efforts, whatever you're doing for the animals. And from the bottom of my heart, I wish you the very best. I'm sure I speak for our viewers as well. The link to the donation, monthly donation or otherwise, is attached to this post as well. So viewers, please feel free to support John in his endeavor, admirable endeavor. Thank you so much, John, for making time for us. And we wish you the very best.
Mira, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for giving animals a platform and for doing incredible animal advocacy yourself. The animals are lucky to have you on their side, and thank you to all your viewers and listeners to hearing me out and having an open heart and an open mind. Cheers.
That's a very sweet thing to say. Thank you, John.